I've been horrifically depressed recently. Now, I don't know if this is just due to my constant and unending relationship woes brought about by my own hands. Why do you keep doing this to me? Or if it's just the unique blend of darkness that hides away behind my eyes in a ceaseless realm of torment. The thing is that video games just haven't been able to... What? Excellent. So, Katamari Damacy is a bit of a cult classic of a series. It's a game filled with esoteric and strange humour and presentation that is so bombastic and large that people will either instantly fall in love with it or simply be confused. Now, I don't know if you gathered from my t-shirt, but I love this series. I fell in love, ironically, with We Love Katamari, which was the first one to land on European shores. I guess the first one was deemed too wacky and out there for our rules-loving continent. Needless to say though, it was incredible and is probably one of the greatest games ever. And then no other games came out ever again. Okay, that's a lie, lots of games came out, but they were all fine. I only went on to play the Xbox 360 game, Beautiful Katamari, and it was fine. Games can be fine, but it never captured that energy of the first two. These games are liquid happiness. If your liquid was entirely digital and screen-based, and also not a liquid, but like actually light or computer dreams. Anyway, they're joy incarnate. I have a very pleasant and vivid memory from 11 years ago where my friend was moving into a flat we were sharing. I'd already moved in, but without internet, I'd hooked up my PS2 to some ancient CRT left in the flat and was just playing my way through We Love Katamari, while he and his father were moving all his stuff in around me, dropping off boxes in the living room, only pausing to be absolutely and utterly baffled by the royal rainbow bursting across the screen, or the screams of 100 townspeople falling prey to my balls. Good times. So, 100 years later, we're back. As ever, the king of the cosmos, the absolute cosmic unit he is, has managed to destroy the universe again. But once it wasn't on some grand drunken bender, as is his wont. But instead, due to accidentally playing around with the cosmic scroll, doing tricks with it and all, and then tossing it into space where it promptly destroyed the Earth and everything else in the universe. Cool. Yes, in an ever-increasingly Sisyphusian task, all the stars that you created in the previous games that then got destroyed, only for you to restore them, only for them to then be destroyed again, for you to then restore them, have once more, well, been destroyed. So you've got to roll your boulder up that hill once more to restore reality, as the somewhat aloof and reckless king of cosmos stares at your existence with base indifference. So it's down to you, the prince, to fix it once more. But how? Well, balls. Specifically sticky balls. The Katamari. With all of existence destroyed, the king tasked you with travelling through time to gather memories of the world to recreate the universe, and you do that by rolling up everything you can get your tiny little hands on. Not much has changed in the formula here from the other games. The central premise is simple. You've got a ball of a certain size, and you roll it around, picking up all sorts of bits and pieces, like pins and sweets, growing it larger, like a lint roller or a snowball. As you roll it bigger, you can pick up bigger items, until, before you know it, you're snatching up unsuspecting members of the public into your sticky web, and absolute chaos promptly unfolds. The idea is that you're set with challenges to complete by the king. Normally, roll a Katamari of a certain size within a certain time. Pretty straightforward. Like I said, this isn't exactly groundbreaking to the formula, but there is something great about its simplicity and familiar feel. With this being a modern game for modern people, Once Upon a Katamari could have easily fallen victim to being released on the latest Unreal Engine, and be subjected to the latest high-fidelity graphics. But instead, it keeps the chunky polygonal feel of its predecessors, allowing for that instant quirkiness to be clear. People are barely more than a rectangle with two flapping strips for arms, yet somehow with all this, so much character is portrayed through careful arrangement of props and people. It's just silly cathartic fun as you cut about a little map, snatching up all sorts of bits and pieces. The individual maps aren't just make something big, but instead will task you to do the usual sort of weirdness you might come to expect. You've got to roll up a bunch of drinks, carefully roll around an old man's house to create the most expensive basket of 50 items, or even creating a beautiful oasis in a barren desert. It's fun as it provides a whole host of variety for what you're trying to do. Sure, you could argue that at the end of the day, you are mostly just aiming to create something comically large, enough to casually roll up everything you can get your eyes on. But it's still fun. That ASMR light feel that rolls off you as you roll over the pops and pings and screams of all the bits you're picking up that's rattling away. And at least there's none of that accursed cow and bear horror that existed in the previous games. Oh no. Sadly, you will never escape the cow-bear war. I fear it has become somewhat of a staple to the series, and endless suffering awaits. It remains one of the few level ideas that actively seeks to frustrate and troll you, as anything even tangentially related to a cow or bear brings your entire run to an end. Literal landmines of cowcoes. And not a cow tool in sight. However, I may just be God's gift to gaming, but Once Upon a Katamari felt very easy. You see, while you've always had your initial goal of a certain size or amount of dinosaurs, you're always prompted to go on and smash your limits, go beyond, beyond expectation, to try and finally get maybe some kind of positive feedback from your dad. Previous games have never given you an idea as to how well you did beyond the King of Cosmos's evaluation at the end, where he might just, scoff at your mediocre offering to the stars. This was great, as you try levels again, trying to get a bigger and better go, all in the name of chasing the dragon that is your father's approval. The thing is, now you've got this little indicator on the side here that tells you just how much love you're going to receive. Never in my human life have I ever received an S rank of validation from my own father, but in Once Upon a Katamari, I was lapping the positivity up like I'd go on to grow up to be a well-rounded and emotionally stable person. On my first go of almost every level, I was becoming the greatest son the King of the Cosmos never had. There just wasn't much of a sense of difficulty involved. Never did I come face to face with father's scorn. Or laser vision. And I had to go out of my way to even see this screen. What this means is that you just happily hop, skip, and jump through every level, rarely having to look back or even bumping against a wall. Which is ironic because you bump against walls all the time. More on that later. This frustration does sadly come across in the wider aspects of the game. Oh look, there are bonus challenges. On future runs of a level, you can aim to pick up over a certain amount of items and get yourself a shiny coin. However, you can only do these challenges one at a time. Get enough to complete the Tier 3 challenge on your first try? Sucks to be you, my petty prince. You're doing it again and again. There are also lots of new avatar characters to unlock, the cousins. Some levels will have several cousins per level. However, you can only grab them in order, one at a time. So the second cousin won't appear until you've finished a run in which you picked up the first. Frustrating. This is made even more frustrating by some rather odd cutoff points for how things scale. Look, I get it, it would be probably kind of cumbersome to have every minute piece of garbage still remain loaded when you're the size of an island. This phase in and out of new items in bits and pieces is normally quite well done, subtle even, until it isn't. Your cousins, the crowns, the presents, these are all quite harshly gated to a specific size range, specifically the one they turn up in. You accidentally roll up one too many items and the cousin you are looking at has now despawned, and you have to do the whole thing all over again. Like, this isn't even a case of ignoring something very obvious. For example, this room with the pink cousin in. They're on a shelf, right? They also look pretty large, so you need to be big enough to roll up the shelf and then get them. That's how the game works. Whoops, you hit 20 centimeters and now they're gone. It's not like 20 centimeters even felt overly large, but they're just gone. It's also quite simple to hit those milestones quickly. In another level, you start in the back garden of a house, and if you're quite efficient in rolling things up, by the time you've entered the front garden, you're immediately hitting that 50 centimeter milestone and can watch as the cousin you hadn't even gotten to yet disappears forever. With the way things get squirreled away and hidden, it can mean your sense of when you can and can't roll people up is skewed. If there's one noise you'll hear over and over and over again, it's the sound of you bumping into something, like this particularly aggressive piece of tempura. Rolling up walls has always been a struggle in Katamari games. You would normally spend ages slowly rolling up the lip of something only to bounce off the top because you're maybe not big enough to do that yet. But now, you also get the fun of spending too much time rebounding off the wall before you even get the chance to try climbing it. There's a theory going around that Once Upon a Katamari uses the same engine as the recent mobile game. How recent? Try this exact same year. Now, I don't want to come across as some sort of conspiracy theorist. I'm not crazy. But Once Upon a Katamari doesn't really feel quite right. It doesn't have the same feel as the first two. The way you catch on things, get stuck between gaps easily, how within a slight change you'll go from something being immovable to fully rolled up. It's just not quite cricket. I don't want this little rant to come across as me hating Once Upon a Katamari. It's genuinely fun. I like the different eras you go to and how they often come up with their own ideas and themes of puzzle. It would have been nicer had we actually spent more time in each location than about 3 missions before heading back once more to Edo-era Japan. But that's fine, it's fine. The style and weirdness and humour of the game remains really solid. The Cow Bear level has now grown so meta that they're at literal war, and if you get far enough, they've even spawned some terrible hybrid. The King of the Cosmos is just a sassy guy who is hilariously needy at all times, getting upset when you start a level before he's finished his explanation, and also just popping in to tell you that you've rolled up something strange. You get these little story segments of either the king experiencing culture or the queen and the cousins going on little trips through time, and they're just delightfully fun and silly. And the music, as ever, is incredible. A mixture of smooth city pop grooves, French crooning love song, or big, bombastic and strange medleys of noise, they provide each level with an appropriate backing for this explosion of colour of a game. Once Upon a Katamari is very fun. It does feel like it is a slight return to form for the series, The power-ups that I've barely mentioned are fine, and hardly worth mentioning really, because outside of a few instances, they're not really implemented in interesting ways. They're just there. But the multiplayer aspects also seem quite interesting. I mean, I've not tried them that much because I don't have any friends to play them with, for some reason. At the end of the day, the reason you go out of your way to play a Katamari game is to experience just the pure joy those games represent. Yes, each one is a repetition of a task that has no end. The king will always destroy the universe, and you'll forever be rolling that ball. But at some point, you just have to imagine Sisyphus happy. And if he were playing Once Upon a Katamari instead of stuck on a hill, well, I imagine he'd be pretty happy too. Hello, and thank you for watching my video. As you can tell, I've gone completely insane. Ha 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 ha. No, I spent way too much of my day creating my little attempt at the king of the cosmos, the king of kings, little headpiece. And as you can see, like me, it's depressed. Didn't quite work very well. So what's the point? Might as well fucking die. Anyway, that was a video about Once Upon a Katamari. It's very fun, it's very silly, the comedy's great, the writing is wonderful, my cat's causing a fucking ruckus over in the corner over there. And during all of this, of course, could you imagine, I've been making cinnamon buns, dressed like this, because all I know is misery, and the only way I can get any form of whim and joy is by making my life infinitely harder at all possible times, because otherwise I might run the risk of possibly having to reflect on my life. Instead, it's just much easier to hide away in my internal suffering. Anyway, Katamari Damacy, the Katamari series, they're wonderful, they're great. It's nice that there's a game that actually feels fun. Weirdly though, because I've also just, I think this year and a little bit last year or year before, played the re-rolls of the original 2 Katamari games, and it's like, they are better, but that might just be nostalgia talking. So there is always going to be this difficult question of, do I get this game? Do I get the other 2 games? Do I get all 3 games? It's the latter of the 3 options. So yeah, let me know what you think about either the Katamari series, or Once Upon a Katamari, or any of that. You know, just let me, talk to me, I'm lonely. Otherwise, you can click up here, where there is going to be a video about Hollow Knight Silk Song, which at the time of recording, I've not finished. I'm hardly halfway through. Things have gone wrong in my life, okay? There's a lot happening. I'm sad all the time. Or down here, there is another video. It's going to be about a board game review about The Crew. I genuinely liked this video. It's just short and sweet and fun and silly, and it's also a great board game. Hooray! Or you can click on my face, where there should be a face orb, where you can click to subscribe and stuff. Thank you, and goodbye.